have been doing this work for decades. So I am standing here with them today, but thank you very much for that kind sentiment. I was especially thrilled to hear the High Commissioner's call for ending gender discrimination and nationality laws to be made a priority over the next 5 years of the I Belong campaign. And the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights is certainly here and ready to work with all of you to ensure that it's a priority and that the goal is actually realized. As the High Commissioner said, today in 2019, we have 25 countries that have nationality laws that prevent women from passing their nationality to their children on an equal basis with men. There are 3 countries that prevent men from passing nationality to their children on an equal basis with women when those children are born outside of legal marriage. There are approximately 50 countries that have some form of gender discrimination in their nationality law, with most of those relating to women's inability to pass nationality to a non-national spouse on an equal basis with men. These laws undermine women's equal citizenship and their equality within the family. They also are a root cause of statelessness, which is why UNHCR's I Belong campaign to end statelessness counts ending gender discrimination in nationality laws as action number 3. Now, historically, most nationality laws did deny women the same rights as men had, and this is unsurprising given that many nationality laws were drafted at a time when women were not considered equal citizens. They lacked voting rights, land rights, property rights, inheritance rights, rights within the family. But as societies increasingly came to appreciate that women were in fact equal citizens, over the past century, nationality laws have been changed, and today, roughly 75% of countries uphold gender equality in their nationality laws. These reforms were achieved through the tireless activism of women's rights organizations on the ground and political leadership from people within government that stood up for women's equal citizenship rights. The Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights is carrying on this tradition and is building on decades of activism around the world. We're doing this through our coalition of national and international organizations, UN partner agencies including UNHCR, UN Women, and UNICEF, as well as others, and independent activists. And since our founding in 2014, the same year as the I Belong campaign, we've seen important progress and increasing momentum to end gender discrimination in nationality laws, a human-made problem, once and for all. So for example, building on years of advocacy by our Madagascan National Coalition member, Focused Development Association, in 2015 we convened a conference with them as well as with UNHCR and OHCHR. It brought together government representatives, parliamentarians, representatives from relevant ministries, civil society, and affected persons. And we spent a few days looking at the many harms that are caused by gender discrimination in nationality laws. There are some publications on that table over there if you want to learn more about this, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with the cost of these laws. We also looked at what was needed to achieve reforms. And at the end of this convening, we had a group of parliamentarians and the President of the National Assembly commit to support reforms in the next parliamentary session. A year later, Madagascar came through on this commitment and enacted reforms. And today, with retroactive effect, Madagascan women and men have the equal right to pass nationality to their children. That same year, 2016, Sierra Leone took the same action. And it's important to recognize that the reform that took place in Sierra Leone came also a year after the establishment of the Abidjan Declaration on Eradication of Statelessness in West Africa. In that declaration, all ECOWAS ministers made a commitment to align their nationality laws with CEDAW as part of a broader effort to eradicate statelessness. And we're also seeing this momentum at the regional level. It was mentioned earlier in this session this morning, the Arab Declaration on Belonging and Identity, an incredibly important document. In 2017, the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights co-organized the first Arab League conference on women's nationality rights. This brought together government and civil society from across the Middle East North Africa region, a region that has a high number of countries with this form of discrimination, also the region that has enacted the most number of reforms since the turn of the century to uphold women's right to pass nationality to their children on an equal basis with men. The outcome document of this meeting, and we all know that outcome documents don't always result in action, But this document formed the basis for the Arab Declaration on Belonging and Identity, which was endorsed at an Arab League ministerial meeting in 2018. This historic declaration calls on all Arab League members to uphold equal nationality rights for women and men. This declaration demonstrates the progress that we've seen and the need for further action by governments to take action to uphold their commitment to gender equality, particularly in the area of nationality rights. These commitments have been made through ratification of CEDAW, they have been made through the establishment of the Sustainable Development Goals, they have been voiced here in the halls of the UN, and we find this commitment to gender equality in most countries' constitutions, including those that retain gender discrimination in their nationality laws. Constitutional articles that call for non-discrimination on the basis of sex and equal protection of the law for citizens. So going forward this year, we're working with our coalition members across the Middle East to support the establishment of a plan for action to implement the Arab Declaration on Belonging and Identity, and we hope that a plan of action will be endorsed by Arab League members. This call for reform is persisting across countries where this discrimination still exists, including in Malaysia, where I want to draw particular attention because right now there's increasing calls for constitutional reforms to uphold equal citizenship rights for women and men in line with the Constitution's mandate for non-discrimination on the basis of sex. We're especially heartened by, just in the past month, many voices of support for this reform effort coming from political leaders and political parties, and we're hopeful that this reform will take place in the near future. So in closing, I would just like to say that we, the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights, and our civil society partners, we commit to working with you, working with governments, working with UN agencies, working with other civil society groups and sectors to realize a world where all countries uphold nationality laws that reflect equal rights for women and men, recognizing them as equal citizens. Thank you.